Welcome to my channel. Enjoy this video and subscribe my channel. 90 Day Fiance. Before the 90 days, couple Brian Muniz and Ingrid Resend got into an argument, and one aspect of how Brian chose to handle the situation really bothered me. Brian and Ingrid have been full of trials and tribulations the entire season, and their connection doesn't seem to be improving. While I might have empathy for the 90 Day Fiance couple, I often find myself unimpressed with them, and their most recent appearance has only added to the mixed feelings. When Brian didn't have any protection, he offered Ingrid oral sex. She refused, which led to Brian confiding in his sister. At first I was mystified by their connection, but the conversation ended well enough that I still had faith in the couple. However, I was surprised and frustrated by the turn of events that occurred when before the 90 days newcomers met up again. While he claimed to understand his sister's point of view, his actions seemed to prove otherwise, and I think he tried to manipulate her after Brian stormed out. Because Ingrid didn't want to receive oral sex, Brian called up his sister to ask for advice. It's not very often that 90 Day Fiancé stars feel comfortable enough to talk to their families about their personal lives, so I was already blown away by how open he was. But I also thought his sister gave him sound advice. She explained that, for some women, oral sex is more intimate, and it takes them more time to be open. At that moment, the before the 90 days star seemed to understand and claimed he'd go about the situation differently at first. I was impressed with Brian, and I really hoped he would take his sister's advice seriously. Asking for an outside opinion, especially regarding sex, isn't easy. Brian also seems to struggle with opening up and being vulnerable. While sometimes Brian comes off strong and pushy, I think he does care for Ingrid and her family, and asking for his sister's help is indicative of that. However, while this moment with his sister and his open-mindedness impressed me, I was baffled by his actions following the conversation. What shocked me the most after the conversation was how Brian didn't take his sister's advice. In his confessional after the conversation, the before the 90 days star claimed he was happy to get his sister's point of view, and that it made sense. He seemed to have a renewed sense of understanding and implied he'd go about talking to Ingrid from a more mindful perspective. However, when he confronted Ingrid, he resorted to his old ways. He claimed he didn't understand Ingrid and her thought process. He claimed he didn't understand why oral sex would be more important to her. Instead, he took the situation personally like he had in the past and got upset with Ingrid. He even claimed her perspective didn't make sense, which wasn't what he said before. Overall, from an outside perspective, the situation seemed manipulative, and he didn't follow through on his words, which had been a pattern throughout the season. While I understand Brian might struggle with some self-confidence being a wheelchair user, I also feel like he uses that excuse as a buffer for why people don't like him and want people, more specifically Ingrid, to feel poorly about his experience overall. I thought it was mature of Brian to ask for his sister's guidance, but silly not to actually use it. His actions made me question the point of asking his sister for advice. On the other hand, 90 Day Fiancé is known for its misleading editing tactics, so it's possible that Brian asked for advice after he confronted her. Either way though, I think it's clear that Brian has a chip on his shoulder, and often seems to be waiting for the other shoe to drop, so to speak. As a result, I think he takes situations a little personally. While I'm impressed by his openness and seeking help is a great first step in the future, I think he needs to be more mindful, because it seems like he wants to manipulate the situation in his favor, whether he's right or wrong.